Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. Now, recently, most of you have heard, I think if you haven't heard, you probably have been in a cave somewhere, but this story, this incident with Ahmad Arbery. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the story, it's the story of a young African American male by the name of Ahmad Arbery. I believe he was about 25 years old. Down in Georgia, their footage was leaked or came out to show that he was shot twice in the chest. Two white males who had kind of cornered him in with a pickup truck while he was running up the road. Now, I want to chime in with this, and I was kind of I always like to be cautious and wait and not jump to conclusions whenever these things come up, and I'll explain why. But I think it's very important for us not to jump to conclusions until all the information has come out. Now, we have to be especially careful when it comes to race relations in America. You know, the media. One of the things that they do that's they're very good at is fanning the flames of racism, right? And so during the time of President Obama, it was very there was a very heightened sense of this racial divide in America. And I believe a lot of it had been very much exaggerated. You know, you think about during the time of Obama, you had the Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, et cetera, Orlando Castile, and many other incidences that hit the mainstream media where they continue to promote this narrative that cops were just out randomly hunting African Americans down. Now, and let me say before I go on, I'm a student of history. I do a lot of teaching. I have done videos. I've written books discussing race relations from a historical perspective. And so I'm not ignorant to the history of African American relations here in America and the history of racism and segregation and discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not ignorant to that. And like I always like to say, I was raised in a household where my stepfather was a former Black Panther, and I would hear it all the time about racism, 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 right? So I'm a student of this. You know, I don't want anybody to think that I'm naive or I'm trying to deny the fact that there's a history of racism in the nation. There has been. That's why it's so important for us to not jump to conclusions anytime a story comes out, and for us to have a balanced understanding of these situations based on facts and not based on emotions or feelings. It's very easy to promote a narrative that Black men are just being gunned down randomly by white people, especially police officers. And that's just not the case statistically. It does happen, but statistically, that is not the biggest threat to African American males in this nation. Statistically, there are still a lot more white people that get shot by police officers than Black people. Now, you might say it's disproportional, but we have to look at facts. We can't get caught up in our emotions. We can't allow narratives as being presented to us to shape and to frame us and to get us to act in a way that is not productive and not constructive. Now, again, the media consistently and has, as a Black person in America, we have always understood or come to the conclusion that the media has had a history of being biased towards Black people. We have always had this mindset and understanding. And I remember a quote from Malcolm X who said, "The media is such a powerful entity, it can make a guilty person look innocent and an innocent person look guilty." And so we have to understand the power of the media. We have to understand the narrative and the agenda behind mainstream media, because when we miss that, we will fall victim to their kind of social engineering, if you will. It's a mass manipulation that really pushes this whole idea of groupthink. And so they have African Americans kind of with this monolithic thought, and that we just kind of assume the narrative, and then they put people in place in front of us in mainstream media that stoke the flames of the narrative that they're trying to promote. So, and I'm really disappointed in people like LeBron James and other people. LeBron James tweeted that literally every single day African Americans are hunted down, right? And I paraphrased it, but that's what he said. He said, literally in America, African American males are being hunted down. And I think it's very hypocritical for somebody like LeBron James to say that because, of course, like I said, he's promoting the agenda of mainstream media, the globalist agenda. He's promoting the idea that black males are just randomly shot on a regular basis. He said literally every single day. Now, I would challenge any of you who don't know LeBron James personally to try to walk up to LeBron James' house and knock on his door. I promise you, he has security. He has gates around his house, and I'm not against him for having that. But these are the same people to try to promote and stoke fear in us to make it seem like that black males are at such a disadvantage. Now, this man is probably a billionaire or close to being a billionaire, one of the most popular people in the world. But yet he is always trying to promote this idea of how unfair it is for black people in America. And I would say to LeBron James and people like that 99% of the rest of the country, white and black, would like to trade places with you, and you tell them how unfair it is. You tell the average income, I think in America, maybe $45,000 household income, and I may be give or take a few dollars. So you figure someone who makes households that are surviving at $45,000 to $50,000 a year, who have to go to work every single day and they face many challenges. I would like for you to tell them how unfair it is, and I'm talking about white Americans as well. You tell them how unfair it is when you as a black man are worth almost $1 billion and the skill that you have is playing a game, playing basketball, right? People pay a lot of money to come and see you do something that we would all love to do. I would love to be able, I love basketball. I used to play basketball when I was younger. And how many of us would love to be able to go out and just play basketball? And I'm not taking away from his talent. I'm not taking away from his dedication. But at the end of the day, he's playing a game. He's playing a sport, right? So these are the people that they always put in front of us to promote their agenda and to have us operating in an emotional level and not based on logic or based on actual statistics. Because statistically, the most dangerous place in America for black males are these liberal democratic cities. The most dangerous places in America are cities like Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. All these are democratic liberal cities, right? And the statistics of black males that die every year in these cities at the hands of other African Americans are astronomical. Now, again, I'm not trying to belittle the death of Ahmad Arbery. I'm not trying to belittle the death of Trayvon Martin. I'm not trying to belittle the death of Mike Brown, et cetera, Eric Garner. I could go on and on. But what I'm saying to you is that promoting the idea that black males are just randomly getting hunted down by police officers or white people is a false narrative. Does it happen? Yes. Is there racism? Yes. Have there been racially motivated murders in America? Absolutely, yes. But again, I think that the real issue that we ought to focus on is if we're trying to preserve the life of black males, let's really look at the issue from a broader perspective, right? Let's look at it from a logical, statistical, what's the word I want to use, in a way that we can actually solve, something that we can do, right? Some action plans. How do we do that? Now, I'm going to get back to that in a second, but let me break down just a couple of the facts in the Ahmad Arbery case. And this is how things get out of hand. So the first narrative that I heard when the news came of this murder was that back in, I think it was February when this actually occurred, the first narrative was that this random black male was running down the street and two white males in a pickup truck just gunned him down. I even heard initially that he was shot in the back, right? So they promoted this original narrative that was a false narrative. Now, when you look at the facts, and again, we have to start from a factual basis and not from an emotional basis in order for us to get to and draw some conclusions and to derive facts from this, was that these men thought that he was burglarizing their neighborhood, right? This was a predominantly white neighborhood. This African-American male, they said, was burglarizing houses, and several houses had got burglarized in the neighborhood. So they see Ahmad Arbery, and from what the reports are now coming out is they assume that he was the burglary suspect, right? There's even footage that came out that was leaked afterwards, after the initial footage that was leaked afterwards, that showed him actually walking into a uninhabited dwelling that wasn't his, and a neighbor calling 911 saying that there is a strange African American male inside of a house, and we believe he's trying to commit a crime, right? So that was the narrative. Now, again, I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong. I'm saying we have to start from a factual basis. We have to start from a factual basis. Once we start from a factual basis, then we can get to some type of logical conclusion, right? So there was he actually was walking around, went into the neighborhood, didn't live in that neighborhood. Another neighbor is shown, even in the video that was leaked later, that confronted him in a certain sense. When I say confronted him, this person was across the street. I guess they yelled or was standing there watching him, and you can see Ahmad running out of the household and running up the road, right? Then you see the encounter with the two males. One was sitting in the pickup truck, which was the father. The other one was standing on the road with a shotgun. Ahmad Arbery runs up the road, runs circles around the truck, engages the son. They get into a tussle. You can see Ahmad actually striking the man, and the man shooting him and fatally shooting him, right? From the autopsy reports, he was shot twice in the chest. Now, so again, I'm not saying that these gentlemen were right in shooting him, but the narrative that he was just some random man, black male, running up the street, getting gunned down by two white males is a lot different than the actual facts that are presented, right? So even if, now what I will say is they shouldn't have, and they probably should face criminal charges, but not for the same type of criminal charges that the original narrative was presented as, right? So as a citizen, you have a right to protect your neighborhood. You have a right to, and there's even a thing of citizens arrest, and I'll address that momentarily. But the better option would have been, especially with everyone with camera phones and et cetera, et cetera. And there's even a person who they brought in, he was on the news as well, who actually videoed the encounter with his phone. The better option would have been to take pictures of the young man, even ask him, what are you doing here? Take pictures, take a video of what the young man was doing and what he looked like, and submit it to the police and let them investigate it. The better option was not to confront him with shotguns, right? Because at the end of the day, even if he stole something from someone's house, it does not warrant shooting the man. Right. That's my opinion. That's my view. And I think it's a very logical one. Right. Stealing from someone's house. Now, if they said that they felt that there was a threat, that when he was burglarizing people's houses, that he could have been violent towards, people when he entered into their dwelling, that's a possibility as well. But in that particular moment, when the confrontation occurred, he's simply running up the road by himself. And based on the footage that I saw, he didn't physically steal anything that time, right? I'm not saying he stole anything before or he was going to steal anything. I'm just saying that he hadn't stolen anything at the time of the confrontation. And so, worst case scenario, these gentlemen were acting as vigilantes. They were taking the law into their own hands, which, maybe manslaughter or something like that. In any event, they showed poor judgment, and they overstepped their authority. I will say that. And for that, they should be criminally charged. But I want us to make sure that we don't get way out in the left field with this thing, especially as African Americans, because you will have people that are fanning the flames of racism. There's people marching all over the country for, I should say, jogging for Ahmad. And, again, it's very unfortunate. My prayers are for their family. My prayers are for all those who are affected by this, his family and friends. I pray that God's peace intervene in this whole thing, because we don't want riots and looting, and we don't want any harm to come to someone who we don't want harm to come to anyone as a result of this, right? Even though there was someone harmed, we do want justice. And so as the facts come out and the investigation goes on, then we do want justice. If these gentlemen were acting as vigilantes and overstepping their boundaries, then they should be punished. They should face jail time and criminal charges, right? Because you can't just go out here confronting people, just like the George Zimmerman trial. The whole George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin incident. It would have been a better thing for George Zimmerman not to have followed Trayvon and confronted him. That's how things got out of hand, because he was following Trayvon. Trayvon went back and confronted him. A fight ensued, and then Trayvon got shot. And so, again, I want us to make sure that we look at things from a factual basis. because again, the narrative with Trayvon Martin was also that this random young man was just walking around in the neighborhood minding his own business and a white male just gunned him down. That is the narrative, and that's not actually what happened. Okay, with this Ahmad Arbery, he wasn't just running up the road and some random person came up to him and shot him down. White person saw a black guy jogging and just shot him down. That's not really what happened. That's not the true narrative. There's a lot more to it, and so we have to make sure that we get all the information before we get emotionally engaged in these type of things, because when we get emotionally engaged based on lack of facts and lack of understanding, then things really go to the left, right? So again, I want to circle back around as I bring this to a close. And the reason that these things are very near and dear to my heart is because I know at least 3 or 4 people who have lost sons, African American sons, young men in the prime of their life, got murdered through violence. At least 3 or 4 of them, senseless violence. And the ones that I know, it wasn't as though their sons were doing anything that would warrant them to get murdered. They got killed by other African American males. And the thing that really bothers me, or really my heart goes out to them, is because when we have an incident like Ahmad Arbery or Trayvon Martin, and I saw the public engagement, I saw how much energy that the African American community exerted to talk about these things without all the facts, just from an emotional standpoint, but yet the 80 to 90% of our African American males that get murdered senselessly by other African American males, where is the outrage for that? Where is the energy that's being exerted to try to preserve their lives? Because anytime we lose young black males, it's a tragedy. And again, the most dangerous places for African American males in America are African American communities, large cities that are mainly run by liberal Democrats. And the reason that I'm constantly reminding us of liberal Democrats, and I'm not a Republican before anybody thinks that is, because I'm saying that the number one thing that causes an environment where there's an exaggerated amount of violence in the community is the breakdown of the family. Breakdown of family structures and family values, because all of these communities that are super dangerous for African American males are communities that have failing school districts. They have high rates of poverty, but more importantly, they have high rates of unwed pregnancies, which shows a breakdown of the family unit. In Baltimore, during the time of the young man who got Freddie Gray, who got killed in the back, or who died in the back of a police car, after it was said that he was violently assaulted by police officers in an arrest. The same time that happened, I read statistically that in Baltimore City, only 16% of teenagers lived in a household with their fathers. I'm going to say that again, that in Baltimore, during the time of the Freddie Gray incident and trial, that only 16% of teenagers in Baltimore, African-American teenagers, lived in a household with their fathers. This is a clear breakdown of the family. And until we actually look at things from a factual, logical perspective, we will never solve our issues. We will never come to a place where we're helping to preserve black lives. We will never come to a solution because we are being distracted by false narratives. I'm going to say that again. We will never come to a conclusion because we're being distracted by false narratives. So when we try to solve the problem of young black males randomly getting gunned down by white police officers or white males, we're never going to solve that, because that's not a real thing. I mean, it happens, I'm saying, but it's not statistically a huge thing. Every situation should be taken at face value, right? So these young men, or old men, one is 64, one's 34, based on the facts that's out there, probably should be criminally charged with manslaughter, right? They should be criminally charged with maybe some other things, but it's a different circumstance than what they originally tried to promote. And the reason, and I keep saying this over and over again, the reason they're promoting this is because they have a larger agenda, and we can't fall victim to the larger agenda, because ultimately when we do, we will never solve our issues. How about if we really focus on these communities where African American males have a 4 or 5 times greater probability of being incarcerated than their white counterparts. These communities where these communities where you have huge amounts of black on black crime, right? Broken down families, failing school districts. How about if we really focus on those issues and looking to fix those issues and empowering our community, empowering our families, educating our young people, and really looking at things from a historical, biblical, and logical perspective, maybe we will be able to solve our problems. Out of the 80 to 90% of the African American males that die at the hands of other African American males, what if we begin to really get to the root of the problem and be able to solve it? Because that same energy that we exert sometimes to, behind a false narrative, if we use that same energy to really connect with the real problems and issues and have real solutions and raise up real leaders and not the ones who are promoting the false narrative, I think we would do a lot better, and it would save our sons and our daughters. I have children, and I'm really concerned about it, which is why this is so near and dear to me. But I also have grandchildren, and so as my grandchildren grow, I want us to be able to deal with these core issues in a way that they have an opportunity for a long and prosperous life in America. This has been Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and also the founder of the 2019 movement. And until next time, peace and blessings to you. Shalom, shalom.